the way, the smoke is somewhat cleared in the NFL. Who did the best? Who did the worst? Let's just start with that.
Well, the hardest thing about all this is that we all judge on who spent the most money, right? And so I think the Miami Dolphins probably underwent the biggest facelift with Ndamukong Suh and trading Mike Wallace and getting Kenny Stills and they're still doing work, trading Danielle Ellaby and I think they probably improved. I really think the Jets improved. I mean, that to me, the Jets spending all that money on secondary help and signing Darrelle Revis and Buster Skrine and all that. I think the Jets did really well. I think the Green Bay Packers did great in basically just re-signing their own guys. They got Randall Cobb and they got big tackle they wanted and Brian Bulaga.
Yeah.
I think they did really well too.
I want.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, I was going to throw a sidebar. When you mentioned Mike Wallace, I hated that signing when they did it. I would like to ask you, since you cover it so closely, closer than I do, I think the worst free agent signings you can do are like number 2 wide receivers from other teams because they just seem to never work out.
You mean like Eric Decker to the Jets?
Well, I'm not pointing at Eric Decker, but I've just seen over the years. I mean, Mike Wallace. You thought the money they threw at him that wide receivers that are not the premier wide receivers really just seem not to work out. And since Ian covers it so closely, I'm certain that he has a better handle on it than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right about that. Projecting guys to be something they aren't is always really dangerous. Like for instance, here's one that I don't know how it's going to work, so I don't want to, put the jinx on anyone. But the Bears signing Pernell McPhee, who I think can be a great player, but who's never really started for the Baltimore Ravens. Now he's going to be a starter for the Bears, and going to make a lot of money to do it. Okay, but you're asking him to do something he hasn't really done. Whereas, the same thing with Eric Decker. You're asking him to be a number 1 receiver, which he's never really been. Contrast that to what the Broncos did with Emmanuel Sanders. He's going to come in and maybe be the 3rd offensive weapon, maybe the 4th, and you're going to pay him not a lot of money and then see what happens. Well, he ended up being, probably the number 2 option for the Broncos and one of the better free agent signings of all last year. Part of that is because you say, all right, be who you are at the least. And if you are, what you were last year with the Steelers, then we're fine. Well, Sanders ended up being more than that. But that's kind of the hard thing for me is when you project someone to say, all right, we're going to pay you a lot of money to be something you've never really been before.
It's funny because I would also add to that, and I interrupted the first question I'd ask you, but the number 2 receiver for a team is always defensed by the number 2 cornerback. He goes to another team, he's expected to be the number 1 receiver. They double cover him, they put the best cornerback on him, and we see the real value of that guy that it just doesn't work out. But I apologize. You were in the middle of talking about who did the best and the worst in the NFL in terms of just quality, and I think you made a couple of exceptional points. If you would like to follow up on that before I interrupted you.
Well, I mean, just the main thing is that we talk so much about the splash that teams are making, right? And everyone spends so much money. But, here's the team that I think is going to end up doing pretty well. It's the Atlanta Falcons. 2 low-cost signings of guys who are going to help them on the edge, Adrian Claiborne and O'Brien Schofield. 2 guys that are not really on the radar, who are not going to make a lot of money, who are going to allow them to do everything they want to do as a franchise, but didn't cost a lot. I mean, I think those kinds of signings are the ones we should probably watch for as much as the big money signings.
I was just going to add on Atlanta, the forgotten quarterback in the entire NFL is Matt Ryan. I mean, talk about somebody who's fallen off the map. I mean, nobody's paying any attention to him. His career's not over. We're talking about a top caliber quarterback who nobody paid any attention to this past season. Is that a fair statement, Ian?
I think. I don't know. I don't know what Matt Ryan is. And that's, he hasn't, he's been to the NFC title game. He's been within a basically within a reception of getting to the Super Bowl, and he has a beautiful contract that's going to pay him $100 million. And I don't know what he is, because he hasn't really been protected well enough. They haven't had success as a team. And, we know that you can debate quarterback wins as a real stat or not, but we judge quarterbacks based on how many times they win. Peyton Manning is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. And look at the way the Broncos season ended, and it's almost like we forget how great Peyton Manning is because his team didn't win. That's just reality. So I think Matt Ryan's a great quarterback. I don't know how great, because his talent has been down overall on his team.